Hi, welcome back. We're going to finish up on our portfolio number 9 that deals with pattern using a commercial pattern. We've already done shortening and lengthening exercises, so we know how to treat our pattern when we get our full pattern piece out here to get ready to cut it. But 9, and it should be just C, there is a typo, that B doesn't belong there, just so you know. In comparison, it's just 9C. And this is a mini exercise for laying out and understanding the layout that you're going to use to be efficient in your yardage usage and supposedly use the amount that they told you to purchase. All right, let's get started. For this little mini exercise, you need your pattern instructions that has all of the layout and cutting information that we've talked about a little bit about the symbols and etc. So we need that now. On their full size, you would always do this with a tape measure. On our little mini patterns, it's a little bit easier to use a ruler and see what we're talking about. You would be using both on your pattern, your full size pattern, tape measure and your clear ruler. In the module for P9C, there's this little tinier yet than what we just did in our shortening and lengthening. It's smaller, so you just need to print this out once or copy it once. Just remember that you need to make it smaller. Now, those others were like about 9.5 inches. These are probably, let's just measure it so you'd have an idea of what perspective it is. It is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 inches is the height. And in the farthest part or peak in width, it is 1, 2.5 inches wide. So you want to get those measurements because that's important in how I'm going to have you do the layout itself to simulate on your actual fabric in proportion. So you need just this printed out once and then cut out. Then you need some pins. If it was the real thing, you need all the pins that you need. I just have a few here, and I'll show you what I'm going to do with those in a minute. And then I want you to have a regular 8.5 by 11 inch piece of paper. Now, it doesn't have to be, again, colored, but if you have at least brown paper or something so that, again, you can see the difference, what we're talking about. So this represents your yardage is what this does. And just to start with, I'm going to go ahead and write on here that one side, this is the right side or the face of the fabric or the self side, right? And I'm going to put some pattern on it. So it's clear that this is not the back side. Because what did we say? We wanted to always lay out and cut and work from the back side or the wrong side. And your pattern layout will tell you to do that as well. Okay, so we've got our fabric ready and prepped. And then the exercise sheet, once again, tells you to get that mini pattern and that you're going to need scissors, a clear ruler and your tape measure, a marker, a pencil, and some paper to do the layout on. A colored piece is ideal. And that should be an 8.5 by 11 inch piece of paper. And it's important that that's the size that you use. And then you cut out the pieces and then follow along on the video with your pattern layout. Now, what I also have down right now is a piece of cardboard, foam board, anything that I can like poke in my pins, because actually pinning that small piece of paper onto another piece of paper is really pretty useless. So we're going to just poke it into something, piece of cardboard or something, and then when you've got your layout the way you want it, then you can tape it down and take the photo and submit it in this box. All right. So we're going to start out by actually finding our layout. And the layouts for this pattern come in the second column they start. We went over this message that they gave us about rules and actually seeing which is right side, wrong side as they lay it out. And I'm going to zoom in for a little bit so you can see pretty clearly what I'm talking about when we talk about the different indications here. So they're giving us two color codings for pattern right side and the wrong side of a pattern piece. And then the right side of the fabric and the wrong side of the fabric. And that becomes really important. It also tells you that we need to do it double thickness or double, not single. None of the layouts that they give us are single unless you're looking at a certain knit, and that's for the t-shirt. So for the pant, they are all cut double, 2 layers of fabric. Okay, so let's find where I'm going to be doing that, the C, the regular pant, and I've cut out my pieces. They look like this now. They're a little bit smaller and tinier. Okay. And I've got, one thing I want to make you aware of, the pattern comes with just one pocket. And I don't know if you remember the other day when we were talking about getting our pattern pieces out in the video, I said that we have to cut 4 of those. So if we're cutting double, that means we have to cut it twice. So a lot of people will go ahead and copy that pocket, which is right here, and just copy this off on another piece of paper, right? Lay it down, see it, and copy, so that you have your 2 pieces and you don't have to cut one and then lay it again. And you get a better layout. You don't have to worry that you aren't going to fit everything in. So making an extra pocket pattern, tracing that off is really helpful. And in the mini one here, I have done that. I've given you 2 pockets to start with so that you can see what that means. Okay. So we've got our patterns all prepped and ready. We've done whatever adjustments we're going to do to the length, shorten it or lengthen it. And now I want to find my pant. And I bought fabric that was 45 inches wide. And I'm going to cut, they're giving you both children and then the adult sizes. And the other day I told you I was going to cut, when we were preparing a pattern, I said I'm going to cut an adult large in the adult size. And then I'm also working with a small in the children's. But we're going to do the adult patterns because that's probably what most of you are doing. And so I'm going to find the first thing that they give you. You can see they start talking about the width, right? They give it to you in centimeters and in inches. And we know I want to do pant CD, right? I don't want to do right now the short. I'm not doing that. I'm doing the pants, probably C. And then I bought 45-inch wide fabric. And I know I've already prepped my 3 pieces, pattern pieces. It's telling you that there again. And now I want to find the size. So it's saying this is for 45-inch goods here. And just to show you up here, and then on the top of the next column, it's the same. It's the pant. It continues with those pieces, 5, 6, and 7. And it shows you 60-inch goods. And if you remember, this pattern said you could use a stable knit. And we kind of talked about some of those stable knits last week. And after you sew with knits the first time, you could probably convert this and use the pant also in a knit and sew it. So that 60 inches is where knits come in. You may find some chambrays, As I said, you could use a chambray, you could use a linen, and some rayons that might be 58, 60 inches. If that's the case, then you're going to be doing that. What I've done the scale for, actually, if you do have 60 inch, you could look at this one too. Even on the scale that I just did, it should be fine. Should be. But we're going to go back down here, and for the exercise, I'm going to be doing a large adult. Those are the small children's sizes. And these are the adult, the small, medium, large, extra large, tall, large. And so I know I found my sizes there. So now this is my cutting layout right there. They give you all these wonderful pictures. So I'm going to highlight that so that if I'm looking, I mean, we don't have that many pieces to worry about, but when you start getting patterns that have lots of pieces and you've got the pattern layout going every different direction and you got pieces and fabric everywhere, it's nice to know I'm highlighted right where I need to go back and I don't have to reconfirm that I'm in the right place when I'm looking at something for instructions. All right, so we've located that. Now the first thing we're going to see is, what am I supposed to do to my fabric? How is my fabric supposed to lay? Well, we're going to look at this outer thing here is the fabric. And if you notice, it's like that dotted shaded right there. And then the fabric out here is plain. So if we go back to our little kiosk over here, the little key tells us that that shading is the right side of fabric and the lack of it is the wrong side. So back at our layout, the SL stands for the selvage, and that FP stands for the fold. And so they have folded their fabric lengthwise so that here's a selvage and there's a selvage. They are not showing it laying right on top of each other because they want to indicate that that's what's happening. You, though, need to know that when we do lay it down, this selvage needs to be even with that selvage. Again, they're just showing it to you this way so that you know you're supposed to fold it with the right sides together. And if you remember, after I had pressed out my fabric in the prepping your fabric video, that was when I finished rolling it up and have it ready to use, which it's over here. We rolled it so the outside, the face rather, is inside here, and the outside that we're seeing when we unroll it is the wrong side. So I've already got the two right sides already halfway started in getting a layout like that they want. Okay. So let's go the next step. So let's get our fabric in that position. So I had you like right on one side. Now we'll go back out just a little bit so you can see the full thing. Right? So this is our right side of our fabric, and they said that that needs to be in. And the long lengthwise is our selvage. So I'm just going to write selv there, selv there. And this becomes our crosswise grain, right? This is the cut edge when you get it from the store. That's a cut edge, and that's a cut edge over here. And so we need to fold it right sides together so that our selvages are even along here. If they are not, if they are not even there and you can't make them lay straight, it means that your fabric is off grain. And there's a couple of things that we can do when we get to that point, when we get our fabric laid out. But now you have simulated your yardage by putting the salve edges together. You've created a fold in the fabric. If we were to have pieces that were cut on the fold, that's what this is. And our selvage edges together. And they have it laying. I always go right with what they show us. That way I know I'm not going to get in trouble and mess up what they have told me how to do it, and I decide to go off on my own, and then maybe I won't have enough yardage if I'm not paying attention to what they did. Okay, we're going to move this over here just a little bit, like so. You still can see that. And now I've got my fabric here on my pin board. You might have a big pin board. I didn't get out my big pin board. I just got out a little piece of cardboard. We'll talk about pin board here probably when we get to the hoodie. All right, and I've got my pieces. And now we've got the fabric position, selvage on the top, fold on the bottom, going this lengthwise. And the first piece that they're laying down is piece number 6. Which happens to be the back. It's this piece. Well, when this pattern, mini pattern was developed, we didn't flip it like it looks like they did in the pattern to use it. So they've actually got it laying this way. Do you see that? And when that happens, on the pattern, usually the tissue you can see through, but on the pattern, I will come back and go ahead and draw in that grain line because that's really important for layout. Very, very important. And I will just trace over that or get a marker out if I can see through it and line it up and give that. And then I might also do this, put that it's pattern 6 so I know where I'm at from the back side. Okay, so that one's laying there. So we're just going to use use of the fabric and the resources that we have, trying to be zero waste, and or if we do have anything left over, thinking how it is efficient to use it for something else. Because if we just start randomly laying it on here, we may not have enough to begin with, or we might have used too much and it can't be used for something else, the pieces in between. Okay, so we're just going to lay that over here for right now. And then we're going to see where number 5, the front, they have that positioned so that it barely touches. Do you see that? On theirs. But ours, we've got enough room that we can slide it down just a little bit. Right? We're okay here. And we're to save a little bit of fabric up there, like if I'm going to make my drawstring out of that, I'd like to have that length. So as long as my pieces are fitting, I can continue to scooch it down, right? Because it already has a seam allowance on it. So I don't have to worry about that right there because I can cut right around that and still have my seam allowance. So that one kind of goes in there. And then they're saying they want their pockets down over in here. Okay, which they work well there. However, I have to weigh in and decide if I unfolded that piece, it could be a nice chunk, right? Whereas if I unfold this, it's like 2 pieces like this, right? It's not an unfolded width piece. So would I rather have this piece here to do something with? Or would I rather have the 2 pieces up here? I know I want to have something for my drawstring up there if I can use it. So we would go with that. So in this case, maybe I'll choose, to put them both like this because it still fits in there. Or maybe I will put them down here. Again, it is a personal choice thinking about how much space or yardage you have left in certain positions. Now you can see why it's really great to have two of that pocket, because otherwise if you only had one, you'd have to make sure that, what if you got into a situation where you really, you're having to really squeeze this out of here and you need to know, well, does another one fit there or not? This way, if you have that other one traced off, it's ready to go. Okay, we are not ready to pin down yet. Once we kind of know we have this layout, that's the other thing. You never cut until you've laid everything out. So don't cut one piece and then pin the next and cut it, because that is a surefire way to end up not having enough fabric and to cut wrong. So what is that? Measure twice and only cut once. That really does matter here. What we have to do is that line that we're given, that grain line, has to be on grain. And remember, it runs parallel to the selve edge. That is a straight edge. So whatever we do, we need to make this distance the same as that distance up there on the arrow. How I usually do it is I anchor it. So I'll look and see, oh, this is good, using good there. I'm on both down below and everything. That's looking good. And I could go a little bit closer over to that edge yet. The one thing you don't want to do is we do not cut the selvage into the pattern. It's too tightly woven. It doesn't allow for movement. So you shouldn't do right over the edge and include the selvage in your seam allowance. You don't want to do that. So you have to be at least far enough away that you're not in selvage. Okay? So I would be putting a pin into my fabric in the center of my arrow. We're just going to put a little poke pin in there right now to kind of just keep it down in the cardboard. And now I'm going to come with my tape measure, if that makes more sense, on a bigger, longer piece of fabric. In this case, we're going to use our little clear ruler. And we're going to measure from that arrow to the selve edge. And it happens to be exactly an inch right now. So now I'm going to go down to the bottom of the arrow. And I'm going to measure 1 inch. It's on there. So I'm going to put in my pin on the arrow. I'm pinning now on the arrow, not anyplace else. And then I'm going to go up here and see if I've got the arrow. Well, it looks like it should technically just move a tiny bit. And I don't know if I'm going to get it to, since I've pinned it to the cardboard and it's not really slidable much. Let's see if I just slid it too much. So let's see what we've got. Well, that's much better here. Let's see down here what we've got. Don't know if I can see. Oh, I can put it this way. Yeah, that's still on. So now we know we've got it anchored on grain. That piece is anchored. And now before I go pinning otherwise, I just leave the pins right in there. And now I go and do my next major piece. Okay, so we said we were going to scoot him down in here as much as we could. And we don't want to cut the fold in here. We want to, right next to the edge is efficient, but you don't want it, otherwise it's going to be one big piece and unfold it, and then you have to figure out where I'm cutting to make it the right shape if you unfolded it. However, there is no real guarantee that that fold line is really straight like that edge, like the selve edge is. So we don't measure to this fold line. We always still measure our grain lines to the selve edge. So once again, I do kind of an eye, and I go, oh, does that look like it's straight? It's pretty good. Let's try that. So I'm going to anchor in the center of my arrow, pin it to the fabric, come over here, and measure now from the selve edge up to that. And it's actually 3 1/4. So now I'm going to go down here. That pin is in my way since it's standing up. We're going to make it go this way. And see if we've got 3 1/4 here. And we do. So that end is good. Anchor it there to the fabric. And now we're going to go down here and see if we're at 3 1/4 there. Well, once again, it's maybe a fraction, just that little bit of movement. And on the tissue paper, it's much easier to do that than on a hard piece of paper like this. Okay, so now the same thing happened with our pockets. That grain line needs to be perpendicular or parallel to this. The same thing's going on there. So it's a shorter piece, so we don't have quite the distance to do it. So what I might do in this case is pin just one end of the arrow instead of in the center, since it's shorter. And I'm going to remove that pin for right now because it's standing up. And we're going to measure now from our selvage to that arrow. And it is on 3 1, 2, 3, 4, 5/8. So I can probably see, by sliding my ruler on the real pattern piece, just kind of sliding it down and making sure that that stays even and that that is still on it. On this little tiny piece, yep, that's there. So we're gonna re-anchor this again before we lose our position. And then I'm going to come in and anchor that end of that arrow. Okay. So same thing here. We're going to put this piece down. And I think I'm going to go this way because when I unfold this, that is a nice little corner there. I could maybe make a mask out of it or some other accessory type thing that I might be able to do with it. And we're going to move that for a minute so that I can measure. If it was a pin in the fabric, you'd be able to maneuver around it with your tape measure, not a problem, or your yardstick, whatever you're using. Didn't quite get in far enough there. So we're going to cheat a bit there so that we can still measure that one. And it is at 2 3/4. And so I would be sliding my ruler down to make sure that that arrow stayed at 2 3/4, which I can tell it kind of slipped right there. But for our layout purposes, it's such a short distance, I'm sure it is fine. So now we have it plotted, you might say, and what it would be ready to do is actually pin it. But we're not going to do that. We're going to tape it down and take our photo. So before I take out a pin here, I would make sure that I have got it all straightened. And you don't have to tape all the way around this, just enough that it'll stay in a position and you can take your photo. And you'll have 9C complete. All right, there we go. 9C, a layout. You've simulated and understand what your layout is going to be when you actually get your fabric out. And our right sides are inside. And we would be ready to cut this now and get our 2 layers or 2 pieces that we need. And in this case, we need all 4 pieces of that pocket. Okay, I'll see you next on an actual layout. Bye-bye now.